Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The Mandala Effect. And I am so excited to have my good friend, who I haven't seen for 3 years, Ailish Lucas, to the podcast today. Welcome, Ailish.
Thank you, my love. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh no, it's so cool. Ailish is known as the breakthrough coach, which is pretty impressive. She helps women to achieve success and lasting happiness using science-based mindset coaching, which we're going to dig into a lot today, I would imagine. Ailish is the host of the Sparks and Space podcast, and I want to know why it's called that, and the founder of the Glow Getter Collective, which is a business membership for natural beauty businesses. Now, since I've known Ailish, you have like massively pivoted in your business. Like, you started out as a vlogger, didn't you? And now you're this incredible coach. So we will get into your journey, but can you first just tell us who Ailish is in your own words?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And secondly, so I am a full-time mindset coach, and I also have a separate business, as you mentioned, called the Glow Getter, which helps indie beauty brands learn marketing online so they can grow their e-commerce businesses. But my true love is mindset coaching. So and I can tell you a bit about the story in a little bit. But I have been doing the mindset coaching for a while now, and it's one of those things that every time I come off the call with my clients, or even when I'm in a call with my clients, I'm just like, I get to do this. And it's just like, it's so wonderful. And it just feels like my true purpose and calling to be able to help other people. So it feels like a real privilege. And I'm also a full-time stepmom, or bonus mum, to a very cute and cheeky 7-year-old boy. And I live in Manchester.
Oh, fellow northerner. I keep referring to, since I've left London. When I was in London, I was a class as a northerner, and then I moved back to Derbyshire and you realise I'm not actually northern at all. I'm a Midlander, and I just claim the northern bit.
Yeah, but
Um,
it's anybody who's north of M25 is like a
North of
northerner
the
to the
M25, yes,
southerners.
which I definitely am. So anyway, we're not here to talk about me, where I live, and all of this. We did warn about waffling. Um, Amazing. So, okay, right. So from that, let's dig into your journey, because I am so pleased when I saw your pivot into coaching. Like, I just knew that it, like, obviously we haven't spoken for quite a while, but I knew that it was like the right move for you. Does that make sense? Because, as I've known you, like, we had a friendship group, didn't we, that met once a month. We would lunch, and so Teresa was on the podcast, and a few months ago as well, who was in our group, and we were called the what was it, ladies that woo woo or something.
Ladies what woo woo.
Yeah. I'm pleased you remember. But then, like, your business was so different, but we would all sit and basically help coach each other, and we've actually all moved into coaching, which is so weird, isn't it? But I'm so pleased that you've made this pivot and that it aligns so well with your heart. So how did you come to make the decision?
Yeah, so it's been quite a wild ride over the last 3 years, because I feel like I feel like COVID got in the way of our ladies what woo woo
It
lunches.
did.
And then we've struggled to get back to it, but luckily we are, so that's fine. But over the last 3 years, I lived in Portugal for a little bit, and then I came back and COVID hit, and I was still working, doing my business, but I was living by myself and growing my business, and that was really, really hard. And the business was going really well. It was successful. I had won awards by Google for what I was doing and helping other brands to go from like £500 per month to like 50K months
Mm,
online. So like everything was going really well. But I kept kind of hearing this like whisper of the soul of like, this isn't quite it. And
Yeah.
but I would push it down and I would ignore it because I'm like, yeah, at some point it will happen. Like I'm kind of coaching my clients already, but it's more business related. So that maybe that's enough. And then I met my partner who he is a widower and he lost his wife coming up to 5 years ago. So I met him 2 years into, say, his grief journey, where his wife passed away during the birth of their second child. And then, that was very, very difficult. And then his daughter, who survived her mother, then passed away 2 years later when we were together. And when I was providing a heap of support for him, I was providing a lot of support for my bonus son, who he lost his mum when he was 2, then he lost his sister when he was 4. So I was like, I moved in and I became a full time stepmom, and I provided so much support to everybody in my house and then also to my clients, and I got burnout. So this is
Yeah.
probably about 2 years ago now, and I got really extreme burnout where I was like, I couldn't do anything. Like I felt like I just couldn't operate at not only the level that I wanted to, but also it was kind of like a spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, all four of them just burn out.
Mm.
And then again, I heard the whispers of the soul being like, there has to be a better way. And I had, in that January of a couple of years ago, I had just finished one of my launches from my business, The Glow Getter. And it was like the best launch I've ever done. It was like a multiple 5-figure launch, which for some people is small, for other people is great. But I was pleased with it, but also absolutely done in. And I was like,
Yeah.
if I'm going to work this hard, I just need to do it for something that I am wholeheartedly in. So that's when I decided to make the shift into doing mindset coaching. Now, I started off with business coaching because
Mhm.
part of me was like 1 foot in coaching and 1 foot out, because I was a bit like, who is going to take me seriously as a mindset coach? Like, what is going to go on here? Let me do business coaching. So I went and trained with a company called Mind Valley. And then I came across another training, which is what I now specialize in, called Positive Intelligence. And that was created by a really smart guy in America called Shazad Shamin. And what that is it's based off 4 different types of psychologies.
Mhm.
So there's neuroscience, cognitive behavioral psychology, positive psychology, and performance science. And he's brought all of those 4 together and used something called factor analysis to get to the root cause of what truly happens in terms of mindset coaching. So
Mhm.
we can then help create transformation at this root level for our clients. So I went through that process, absolutely loved it. And
Mm.
bearing in mind, like I've done like kind of personal development for the last 15 years. I've walked across the hot coals with Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
I've done all the crazy shiz. And this was the thing that made the biggest difference for me. And that's why I trained in it. And that's what I now focus on.
Amazing. Okay, so I am fascinated because, well, another fellow firewalker here. Um, that is like quite the journey, and I don't know what you think, and I guess you'll see this a lot as well with your clients. But we often have to hit a certain point where we're either not listening to the soul whispers, so we might get burnt out, or we just have to experience something that really pushes us to start living our dreams.
Yeah, massively. It's the Kensho and Satori moment, isn't it? Where you either you listen to the whispers of the soul when they whisper and you do something about it. So it's kind of a process moving into it, or you get shoved. And that's when, like, say, for example, with your experience, you sometimes get shoved. And I think with me, it was like just a breaking point of, yeah, you've
Yeah.
got to do something now. Like, come on.
Yeah. And life sets you up for it. Like you say, you've been doing this in a different way for so long. And you've been like, and anybody I think who falls into personal development, who becomes a natural support for the people around them, like, we're healers at heart. And,
Yeah.
that's he healers, I guess all coaches in some way are helping people heal because we're helping people come back to their soul.
Yeah, I completely agree. But as long as we've also got the support for ourselves, and I think this is where, as women, we tend to fall down, particularly if we have been brought up to be people pleasers and to put everybody else's needs and wants ahead of our own.
Mm,
And that's one of the key things that I see with a lot of women who, like my clients, are female entrepreneurs who are doing really, really well. And yet they struggle with people pleasing, and they struggle with almost being like that hyperachiever and not celebrating almost life, and celebrating the journey. It's always about the destination. And then there's quite a few other different saboteurs is what we call them. So there's little negative voices in your head. There's one main one called a judge, and then there's 9 other accomplice saboteurs, and you can have them in varying degrees, and you can fall into them in various different ways. But what I do see is a lot of the people pleasers are these female entrepreneurs who are those coaches and who are those healers. But
mm,
we sometimes forget ourselves in that. And we sometimes think, oh, well, it's about self-care and it's making sure I'm like sleeping well and eating well and doing my exercise and like all of that sort of thing and the meditation. But it's also about dealing with what's going on in your head and the well, first of all, like the oppression which and the systems that we have to deal with, but also
mm.
your upbringing as well, and being able to almost unlearn everything to then relearn a new way.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, fascinating. So when we met and we were having our ladies what woo woo lunches, we would talk a lot about the law of attraction and manifestation, and this is the world that I sort of started in. We were in a mutual online like business group, and manifestation was thrown around a lot, and it was all this kind of ritual based thing. It almost felt like schoolgirls playing, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm gonna do some manifesting tonight. It just
Yeah.
doesn't fucking work like that. And I wish I knew that 5 years ago. But let's uh so now so now maybe we know a little bit better. Now we know some science stuff that it's not that manifestation isn't real, it is. Like it's literally it's life. Like the law of attraction is life. But what's the science behind it from your learning?
Yeah. So from the science of like manifestation and that area, it absolutely is real. And there's loads of research behind being able to look into that and learn that from an energy perspective, everything like what we put out there does come back to us. But I think from my perspective, I believe in manifestation. I believe in doing the vision boards. Like I've got one up here. I believe in like you doing the identity work of being that person, and you can step into that energy of the person you want to be right now, and you don't have to change anything. But what I found was that you can you can really truly believe in manifestation and have all these goals, and you can really really want it, and you can really try to go towards it. But it's not until you look at what's going in your mind and your body from a somatic perspective, but also a mindset perspective, that if you don't work through those things, then you're not going to be able to achieve what you want. Or you might achieve it, but then you'll mess it up. And because we always have this upper limit problem. So you might hit it and then mess something up and you go back down, or something will happen. So what we then want to do is, and why I moved into the science of it, is so that I could understand, well, I can give you all of these tools and strategies, say in marketing and like the manifestation and all the woo woo stuff, but we need to look at, from a science perspective, how can we deal with what's going on in your head, how you've been brought up, how we can bring some awareness to that, so then we can start to make some real change. Because what tends to happen is most people stop at insight, and they don't
Mhm.
build the mental habits that they need to be able to create that real change. So say for example, this podcast, it's 20% insight. It will be a lovely hit of inspiration for somebody. Going and watching a YouTube video will be a lovely hit of inspiration. Going and connecting with somebody will be a great hit of inspiration. But we are all such individual creatures that unless we build new habits to be able to interrupt the negative voices in our head and choose a different way, that which we call the sage perspective. So until we can do that and learn how to interrupt it, we're always going to stay in the same pattern loop that we then just can't break free of. So it becomes almost like a struggle to be able to get to where we want to go. Whereas in actual fact, if we think about ourselves when we're 90 and then look back at the adventures that we had in the life that we lived, we want to be able to go, well, who did I become along the way? Was I joyful? Did I enjoy the moment? Or was I not present? Was I always on my phone? Was I stressed? Was I snappy with my kids? Was I snappy with my partner? Did I not bother to put effort into those friendships when I really wanted to, but I was just too focused on other things? And this is where it's more like we want to be able to have that perspective to look back on and go, okay, this is how I want to live my life and this is how I want to show up. So how do I do it from a science perspective so that all the woo can be supported and come
Mhm.
through even quicker?
I love that because it's almost like it's kind of, and I agree with you. It's like, forget about manifesting the thing. Yeah, you might want that on an ego level, on a surface level, you might want that, but actually, it's about how you're how the person you become. It's all about the person that you become on the journey to getting there, which we know, but that is where the fulfillment comes from. It isn't about having the thing.
No, it's not, because you can get the thing and you can still be miserable AF.
Yeah.
And yet we get caught up, particularly in society. The focus is hustle culture, the focus is hyper achieving to the next level and the next level and the next level, and you're not successful unless you've hit that. It used to be £1 million, it used to be 7 figures, now you keep seeing 8 figures, and now you see 9 figures, and it's like, when will it ever stop? And it's like the ballpark keeps moving to make things more and more extreme, which then, if you get caught up in that, you can make yourself feel like a failure, when in actual fact you're really successful in your life and what you do.
What do you think happens to somebody long term if they keep on striving for the 6 figures, the 7 figures, the 8 figures, the 9 figures, and they don't answer what their soul like
Well,
wants?
there'll be something that happens where they then, whether that's burnout, whether that's like a life thing that happens, whether that's health, whether that is a career moment, like there'll be something that happens where they then get to make a choice, and it's up to you whether you listen to that choice or not. And some people don't, because they're too scared. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's a scary thing to listen to the whispers of the soul and make a pivot change and essentially start like a new business again or go down a different path. But also, I think it's the privilege of a lifetime, because if you go down the other path where you're like, okay, I don't really know how this is going to work out, but I just know this is what I'm here and what I'm meant to do, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are in that second part,
Yeah.
like that's where the magic really can unfold, because there'll be those synchronistic moments, or there'll be a conversation that happens that then triggers something else, and it feels a lot more in flow. It might not always feel like that. I'm not saying it's going to be all easy along the way, but it's when you can take just the first step forward to believing in yourself and believing that you're here to do some good, and what you believe you can help people with is what people need.
Amazing. So, my question, this is a big question. How do people believe in themselves, especially when they're doing something new?
Yeah, it's hard, but I think this comes down to worthiness and that self-esteem. Because I normally say there's a difference between confidence and self-esteem. You can appear really confident on the outside, but that negative self-chat on the inside can really prevent you from moving forward to where you want to go. So what I tend to recommend to my clients when we start to work through these things is to just getting to know yourself on that deeper level. So some people call it shadow work, some people call it like those limiting voices in your head, some people call it saboteurs like I do, but based off factor analysis research, which is where if you take let me use colors as an example. So you can take all the colors in the world, there's lots of them, but when you apply factor analysis to colors, there are three colors that stem from all of those other colors in the world, and they are red, blue, and yellow. Now, when you do that with mindset work, what we found is there is one main judge that everybody has, which either judges themselves, judges others, or judges circumstances, and then that then activates these accomplice saboteurs. So these can look like the avoider, the controller, the hyperachiever, the hyper rational, hyper vigilant, a people pleaser, restless, or a stickler. And it's when we can understand those voices in our head, and if they're even ours, because what a lot of the time when you start to listen to these voices, you're like, that isn't even my voice. That's my mum's, or that's my grandma's, or that's like my uncle's, or somebody, or it might be my teacher. And it's when we can listen to that voice in our head and go, I'm going to question this, because we've not been brought up to properly question those voices in our head.
Mm.
So when we can start to do that, that's when we can start to break down those barriers, which is the main problem. And then we can also start to get ourselves to feel in safe in our bodies. So this is from a somatic perspective, like regulating that nervous system. I know that that's quite a popular phrase at the moment,
Mm.
like regulating your nervous system, but it is true. When you can get your body to feel calm, and you can listen, and you can break down those voices in your head so that you can then take that next step forward, that's how you start to build that momentum. When you can just take that little leap of faith to go, no, actually, this voice in my head that says it's selfish for me to like start to do the thing that I want to do, or it's selfish for me to put this boundary in place, or it's selfish for me to say no, then instead of listening to that, we go, thank you for that. I understand you're here to keep me safe, and I'm going to try this anyway. That's when we can start to build that momentum and take each step forward every day. Like, even if it's like a millimeter step forward, is better than nothing. And that's when you can start to build more self-esteem, because the self-esteem comes from taking the action.
Mhm.
So when we can do that, that's when real progress starts to happen.
Okay, so once we have figured out those saboteurs, now I would imagine as well, it's actually quite difficult to become aware of those saboteurs, because these sometimes we're not aware of the thoughts. So if
Mhm.
so say you've started working with somebody and you're all figuring out what their saboteurs are, and they are um how easy is it for you to kind of distinguish them and like from each other, and then how do you work with them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the first thing we do is we take them through a quiz that we've got.
Ooh,
So
love a
I
quiz.
love a quiz, love a quiz. So if anybody wants to take the quiz, then all they have to do is follow me on Instagram and send me a DM with the word quiz, and I'll get them signed up.
Oh,
But
cool. We'll put that in the links.
yeah, okay. So that tends to just shape the start of the body of work that we do. And what we then tend to do is go, okay, like, do you feel this is true for you? And if it is, like, how do you feel it's starting to show up? And what we tend to do, it's like a 7 week program that I take people through initially. And in those first 3 weeks, we look at the saboteurs and we go in depth. So first of all, with the judge, because that is the master saboteur, which then activates the other ones. And then we'll look at, say, your top one or two different accomplice saboteurs and go a bit more into them. Now, what I found with some of my clients is in week 2 and week 3, when they look at their accomplice saboteurs, they're like, oh my goodness, it's everywhere. Like, I can see it coming up in every single situation. And that's completely normal. It happens all the time. And it's just because, like you mentioned, sometimes that level of awareness isn't there because it's so ingrained,
Yeah,
and
it's
you've
just
been used,
normal.
yeah, you've been used to it. Like, say for example, I'm 40, and like, I when I was doing that work, I was like, okay, I've been like doing this for like the last 37 years, and I've done the therapy and I've done coaching before and I've done all of the like personal development courses and things that you have. But it's not until you can kind of sit there and go, right, okay, these different voices in my head, how do they show up in a situation? How do they make me feel unsafe? It's kind of similar to internal family systems, if you've ever done
Mhm.
that work. But I've done internal family systems in therapy before, but I found doing positive intelligence more helpful, because what it then does is once you've understood what your saboteur is, you want to be able to flip to what we call a sage mindset. So this is where you are calmer, you are more creative, you are more empathetic, you are wiser, you are curious. There's discernment there instead of
Mm.
judgment. And there's 5 different sage powers that you then have within that sage mindset, which is activate, navigate, explore, empathize, and innovate. And with those, you can start to live in a way that feels slightly more Yoda-like, I like to say. But yeah, I know, totally zen. But it helps you to live in a happier, more fulfilled state of mind, as well as being able to achieve that peak performance that you want. Because I always use the analogy, you can be full right now and hungry for more. Like that is okay. So because I sometimes think people perceive doing this work to be, well, I'll just be really happy and then not want to achieve any of my goals. And I need these saboteurs, otherwise I'll get lazy and complacent. And it's like, no, what the saboteurs has done has pushed you forward. Whereas what we want to do is pull you forward through a higher vision and a kinder way of living, but also being able to achieve what you want. So so first of all, you're noticing your saboteurs, then you're noticing that you want to get to this sage mindset. And in the middle is something that we call PQ reps. Now, this is the bit from neuroscience that really helps you to retrain your brain. And this is the bit which I find fascinating, and it's so, so simple. So with a PQ rep, what it does is it interrupts your old patterns of thinking and doing. So if we go from a really basic neuroscience perspective of, in your brain, a thought will happen and then you'll instantly go to an old programmed way of thinking. What we want to do is reprogram it so that thought happens and then you go to the more sage mindset. And in the middle, what we have to do is interrupt that pattern. So when that thought happens, we can do something very, very simple, like rubbing our 2 fingers together with so much care and attention that we can feel the ridges of our skin. And doing that for 10 seconds literally rewires your brain to be able to then choose a different response. And that pause creates freedom. And that freedom to then choose a different response creates a completely different life for yourself.
I am hooked. I'm fascinated because I I mean, the basis of my work is shadow work and based on Jungian psychology, and I can just see how they kind of go side by side. Like, I take people through their shadow, their unconscious self that they've repressed and pushed away, and that is where the saboteurs come from. Like, that it's all the same part of the mind, just different words. And then basically, as we're integrating the shadow, we bring in so much love and acceptance for ourselves. And that, I was doing that as you were saying, and that is such a caring touch. That's like the skin on skin comfort, support that we often didn't get as children. Um, and is it the softness that helps you to say, okay, I I can stop, I can take a breather, I'm supported, I am safe, and then choose a new thought. And you said that this is that space is what creates freedom and free will. And so a big part of my work, and uh, I'm watch this space because I'm hoping to do a talk on it, is about free will and whether we actually have free will or not. Um, and so, having freedom to make a new choice is your free will.
Mhm. Yeah, it is. And that's where manifestation and then the woo really starts to come in, because when you can then choose what you're truly aligned to, that's when the synchronicities start to happen. But like that, the rubbing the two fingers together is just one exercise that you can do.
Mm.
But just taking it back to the science here, because yes, what you do is like, I feel like it's all much of a muchness in certain ways, like internal family
Yeah.
system, shadow work, saboteurs, and sage powers. It's all similar. But what we found with this is when I take people through the 7-week program, we've put people's brains, not me personally, Shazad has, put
I'm taking
somebody
people's brains out.
I've just taken it out and I've worked with it a little bit. So we put people under fMRI machines at
Yeah.
the beginning of the 6 weeks and at the end of the 6 weeks. And what we found is that when they do positive intelligence the way we teach it to them, they have atrophy, so a
Mm.
decreased matter or a decreased muscle in the left hand side of their brain, which is associated with the survival, and they have growth in the right hand side of their brain, which is associated with the sage power and with that creativity, empathy, curiosity, innovation, and activation. It's amazing. It blows my mind.
Incredible. Incredible. Yeah, I follow a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work as well, and they do a lot of this is why I just love how science is progressing and how I've fallen into this work, you've fallen into this work, and um, we have pioneers that are able to do the research into this. Because um, when I started in personal development, I didn't know any of the science. I was like, I just want a better life. I just want to feel happier. I just want more money. And now, like, the techniques that we are using to help our clients and to help people and like society in general, like if people really do the work, hold the vision that there is a better life there for them, like we can prove it. Like it's there if you want it.
Yeah, massively. And I think it's also worth noting that it doesn't have to be hours a day. For example, with we do everything through an app, and it's literally 15 minutes per day. And
Mm.
that equals 3% of your waking hours. So if you don't have 15 minutes a day, then you need to really seriously look at your life, because even Beyonce has 15 minutes a day. So you know, but it's like it's so simple to be able to incorporate into your day, and with the use of technology to be able to do that as well, where your phone notifies you when you need to like check in for 2 minutes. And that's those really, really small, tiny changes where you're building these new little habits is the thing that rewires your brain. And it doesn't have to be going away for 6 months to like and taking ayahuasca unless you really want to do that. It doesn't have to be that like mind altering thing. Like it can be really, really simple. You can start to make those changes now, and all you need is your phone.
It's amazing. Like we have, and this is like I say this about meditation. People like we know the science of meditation. It's literally you don't need anything. You sit there, you close your eyes, and you breathe. Like it's a free thing, but we make it really difficult, right? But like you're saying, everybody has a phone. You sit there, log on, use an app, and you can have the changes that you want. So how do people like how do they know what they want to rewire their brain to?
So that starts to come with learning about your saboteurs. So once you've learned about your saboteurs, then you can look at what the alternative is, and that's where the sage perspective comes in, where everything can be turned into a gift and an opportunity. And
Mm.
that's where, when we can start to understand how life is happening for us in terms of these things can be turned into a gift and an opportunity rather than life is happening to us, then we can start to make those real changes. And then with the 5 sage powers, like say, for example, if I take one of them, which is explore, then what we can do with explore is, if say you're having an interaction with a partner where they're like, I don't know what to do, sometimes you might jump into trying to help them, and like you end up having that drama triangle of like trying to be a hero whilst they're being a victim. Whereas if then say you use the explore power, you can then be like, okay, I'm curious, like, what would you like to do? And then you can almost jump into that coaching perspective where you're trying to work out a solution to a problem together, but in a really joyful way, rather than them being dragged down by them. Now, one of the things I was talking to my clients about today was mirror neurons.
Mm,
So sometimes in work or in relationships or with our family, one person will be a bit of a downer and you get brought down by them. But when you can start to use PQ in your life, you can start to be that beacon of light in a way that instead of you being brought down, you're staying consistent at the really happy level that you are, which then ultimately over the long term brings your partner up or brings
mhm.
your family member up. So you're then starting to have this like positive ripple effect on everybody. But you have to learn what the sage powers are. Now, I just want to jump back to what you mentioned about meditation. Now, within PQ, what we talk about is there's a difference between meditation and doing PQ,
Mhm.
because with meditation, it's go and sit in a quiet room, go and meditate, like let your thoughts come and go, like just be there and in the moment. But the problem is in the day-to-day world, you can't keep running off to a quiet room to go and
No, you
meditate when
can't.
somebody pisses you off. So what
Unless
we
your meditation room's literally next door.
True, true. But you can't just keep checking out of life to then go, right, okay, let me go and meditate on that and come back to you. So, this is where the PQ exercises of doing that finger rubbing together, which nobody will notice. If you're then in a stressful situation in work or on a tricky call with somebody, you can do that and nobody will notice. And you can bring yourself back into the moment to then be able to choose another way. And again, that creates more freedom.
I love it. I'm going to try this because I really, really like it. I mean, I've done, like you, I've done a lot of personal development, looked into a lot of different spiritual modalities to kind of help, I don't know, understand life, I guess. And it's quite easy to get lost, but when you find your path, you find your path. Sometimes it's difficult. It's like, right, okay, so I have all this intellectual knowledge about how I can make my life better, but what are the tools actually? Like, okay, I
Mhm.
have a vision for my life, but what do I do with that?
And that's the key thing, isn't it? Because a lot of people get stuck on that. I did previously, where it's like, I've almost become a knowledgeable fool where I know all of these things. I've spent all the money on the things, but I can't seem to get myself to where I want to go. And it comes back to that insight over habits.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can start to build those new habits in those really, really small ways, that's where your life changes. It's never normally like it can for some people, but it's never normally in the I started a business and then the next day I'm 40K, and then that propelled me on to everything else. It's like, no, I started the business and then little by little, bit by bit, day by day, I started to build up the habits that I needed to then become the person I wanted to be. And again, with that, it starts with like that, not only that vision for your life, but also the identity of who you want to become. And that's where you understanding what your saboteurs are and understanding what the sage is, so you can move more into that and having a tool to be able to help you do that, which is really, really simple. It's key to be able to help you move forward.
Yeah, definitely. So, why do you think? So, we know these things can help us. Why do you think a lot of people don't take action and do the thing that they know is going to help them?
It's a good question. I feel like there are saboteurs that are in place of them taking those next steps.
Mhm.
It can be like I sometimes think when you look at the US is fully on board with all the mindset and the somatic work. And us Brits have a very healthy skepticism, which I think is right. Like, I think you should question everything. And yet it can sometimes get in the way. And I think that when we can just put down that skepticism and look at actually, how is this going to help me? And where do I want to get to? And if I know that this isn't working, then I need to invest in it, because I think it was Einstein that said you can't solve a problem at the same level of thinking that it was
Mhm.
created. So if you are smart enough to know that, then you are also smart enough to know, well, I can't keep doing this same thing and expecting a different result. So let me get some help. But it can be hard for people, particularly if, say, they're at the beginning and they're really worried
Mm,
about what's the right thing. You can also get complete overwhelm. because there are so many strong personalities on the internet nowadays who say something loudly and confidently enough that then you're like, oh, well, they must be the right people. And then you have other
Yeah.
people doing the same thing. And it just creates this like smoke and mirrors for everybody. And sometimes you've got to really listen to those instincts that says, actually, this really feels like the right way for me. And
Hmm.
then and then just following that little whisper of the soul that, yes, I believe this is right, and then not letting those saboteurs come in as loudly, or saying to them, thank you for being there and keeping me safe with this healthy skepticism. I understand you're here to keep me safe, but I need to try this other way as well. That's
Yeah.
when people can start to make that step forward. But it's hard. Like,
Yeah.
it's everything is hard. It's just kind of what you choose your hard to be.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. What you choose your hard to be. Um, how can people, what is your way of listening to the whispers of the soul? Because sometimes they're so quiet, we don't hear them.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, for me, it's journaling, like
Mm.
just sitting and journaling. And like, don't get me wrong, like I don't have very much time, with like being a full-time stepmom and like all of the stuff that comes with that. But it's once I've dropped James off at school, then coming back and like sitting there for a few minutes and doing a meditation and then journaling and going, okay, like how do I want things to show up? And sometimes, what I do is, if anybody wants to try this practice, is I'll have a question that is, what is in the back of my mind? So, and
Mm.
I'll list down everything that I need to in there. And then it's like, what is something that needs my attention? So I'll list that down and then I'll write down like, if this week went amazingly well, what would I have achieved? And then I start to script. So there's the difference between journaling and scripting, which maybe your listeners know about, where your journaling is kind of journaling out your thoughts, but then the scripting is almost starting to write from the end of the week backwards about how you want to experience that week, and then reading through that and then scheduling in your diary the key things that you want to achieve so that then you make sure you get them done. So that's kind of
Ah,
that's the thing for me.
yeah, amazing. I love that. I love that. Because journaling, I was having a conversation this morning, and I think that apparently there's been a book written and there's been some research done, and like this is such a shit stat. A percentage, like a large amount of successful people who are in the public eye all say that like a lot of their kind of decision making, success, like their vision all comes from having a solid journaling and meditation practice.
Yeah, and it's like that visualization as well,
Mhm.
because if you don't know what you want to create with your life, then you are going to struggle to kind of get there. Wasn't it like in Alice in Wonderland? It said, if you don't know the route you're taking, at any place, anywhere will get you there. I've
Mhm.
hashed that up, but you know what I mean. And I know that visualization can sometimes be hard for people, particularly when you're going through a hard experience in life where you sometimes stop with the dreaming. And it's not until you can ground yourself through a little bit of meditation, start to do the journaling to get out everything that's maybe in your body, like
Mhm.
shake it loose again. So doing some somatic work there, and then starting to go, okay, well, what does an amazing life look like for me? And
Mhm.
just starting that dreaming process again, because when we can start to dream, like it doesn't have to be that one dream and that's all it is forever. Like it can evolve and it can change, and that's okay. And that's the beauty of being able to visualize. But it's not until we can have this clear vision of where we want to go that we can then start to take those steps to get there.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. I love that. That's a lovely journal prompt as well. What does an amazing life look like for me? Um, I really like that. We'll put these tips in the notes as well, so that anybody who wants to go and journal after this can. Um, okay, so we'll start to wind it up here. This has like been fascinating for me. I just love how people bring together, like, I don't know, their life's work and help so many other people with it. I think it's fascinating. and I know that all of our listeners will have found this really valuable as well. What are the top 3 tips that you can give on if somebody knows that they want to retrain their mind? What can you give us 3 tips to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one would be get to know your saboteurs so that then you can understand where all this preconditioning has kind of come from, and that it's not your voice, and like your true voice can come through. Secondly, to get still and to get quiet and do some meditation. But thirdly, then to create that new habit. So whether that's with PQ and working with me, or whether that's with working with somebody else, you have to be able to create a new habit to be able to take the steps forward that you need to. Because if you stop it in sight, then you will never get there. You might get a little bit further forward, but you need to be able to build those habits. So, first of all, understand those saboteurs. Second of all, do some meditation, because it's really, really powerful to kind of listen to those whispers of the soul. And third of all, get yourself a new habit.
Yeah, I love that. Really, really love that, and insight as well, because there are so many people who are serial podcast listeners, serial YouTube watchers, serial Instagram scrollers, and I'm quite fortunate. My Instagram feed is very, very inspirational. But you listen to all that noise, you're gonna get this doesn't help anyone. You have to know when to be able to take the action.
Yeah, massively. You really do. And I think that's it's so easy to get caught up in listening to, like, it's this way, or it's this way, or it's this way, or it's this way. And yes, it can be all of those ways, but also to be able to listen to those whispers of the soul and go, actually, what is right for me? And it won't always be right. Like, you'll still make mistakes, and that's okay. But it's as long as you're listening to those whispers of the soul where it's like, no, I genuinely think this is the right journey for me, or this is the right step for me, you can't go too far wrong.
No, definitely. And I think when we kind of look at the bigger picture of life, those mistakes that we make, they're just a lesson that we have to learn. There is no wrong decision. There is, yeah, some decisions might be a bit more uncomfortable, like the consequences of that decision might be a bit more uncomfortable than a different decision, but ultimately you're going to learn what you needed to learn. So
Yeah, it's a
amazing.
gift and an opportunity. Yeah.
There we go. Ailish, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you? I will add all of your links in the description and the show notes, but where can people find you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is ailish.lucas. So that is AILISH.LUCAS. And like I said, if you want to get access to the quiz, then all you need to do is send me a DM saying quiz. And also, I'm running a free three. I always get confused saying this. It's a 3-day free and live event next week, which is all about your saboteurs and your sage and how to move into your sage power. So if you want to sign up to that, again, just send me a DM with the word happy, and we can sign you up within like a couple of seconds.
Amazing. Will there be a replay of the event?
Yes, I will.
Amazing. Okay. And I will pop your event on Instagram as well. We'll
Thank you,
share that.
darling.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of The Mandala Effect. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your favourite podcast platform. I greatly appreciate your ongoing support, and the podcast wouldn't be where it is today without you, so thank you. Don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and family, and let's continue spreading the mandala effect of magic and infinite possibilities. See you next week.